The infinity loop is the tools of communication that heals and glues society back together. Our podcast is about disruption. We disturb the system that says it's normal and okay to communicate in the old, tired, ineffective, and unintelligent ways. There's a cynical belief rooted in so many of us in which we've told ourselves we can't help how we think or behave because our brains are so wired to react from low-level consciousness that's habitual and automatic. We're coming from our egos where they're running the show and not the infinity loop, where the ego is in a helpful place as a healthy sense of self, so it can help us be in our connected, abundant selves. We're saying by intentionally stepping into the infinity loop, we can affect every interaction we have and change the world. The Infinity Loop Group podcast is going to be about moving from the either-or to both-and way of thinking, where we transcend and include, as Ken Wilber teaches, in which we transcend the limitations of the old masculine and old feminine, but include what is healthy and helpful. What will emerge is a new, balanced, and integrated masculinity and femininity. The time has come where the divine feminine way of being is going to arise. We must learn from it as we let our old ways die, so a new human is resurrected and transfigured. That new human will truly change the world. This podcast is also about having a growth mindset, which hungers to love well while practicing elegant and intelligent self-care. We face our wounds, egos, and shadows in preparation to give this life everything we've got to make the world more connected and beautiful, because we're more connected and beautiful.
Welcome to the Infinity Loop Group podcast. I'm Riley Burns.
I'm Krista Vorse.
And we're going to dive right into our book where we left off last with making amends to ourselves. One of the most painful traumas of all is the constant trauma of self-inflicted betrayal, where you do hear the voice and do nothing about it, and it's your strongest voice of protection. Carolyn Mace.
You were saying about that quote, Riley, you were commenting about regrets. Is that what you were saying? I think you should say that.
Yeah, it was about how most of our regrets come from the things that we don't do, not the things that we do.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that is because we heard a voice inside of us telling us to do it, and we didn't listen to it. And that voice is, in my opinion, our highest self guiding us.
It's our survival instincts, our higher self.
That we betray sometimes for something that we think is better. You know, sometimes we think we know better.
Or we doubt it. We doubt it, for many different reasons.
Well, because we doubt ourselves so much, right?
Yeah, or we doubt. Mm-hmm. We lose our center. And we doubt it because our trauma or our own kind of almost rebellious nature against wisdom and guidance, right? Yeah. Our own, like I would say I had very unhealthy curiosity, which Gavin de Becker, who is considered maybe the foremost expert on violence prevention, said when you are really curious, that's very dangerous. And I've had almost a curiosity toward things that I should not be curious to. Like I'll see something in someone and then I'll know it. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to go pursue that to make sure I'm right, that they really are this bad. It's so, it's the lower nature that we're not listening like to our higher nature. We're listening to like this lower nature that's running the show, or like weird psyche shit.
Well, it's like that angel and demon on our shoulders,
Yeah.
right? It's
Yeah.
the angel is our higher self, speaking from our gut, speaking from love, and then there's
Integrity.
the demon that speaks from comfort, from the chasing of
Conformity. Yeah.
feelings.
Yeah. Interesting. Impulses versus healthy instincts.
Yes.
When something triggers the memory of what I've been through and how I was a participant in it, I can't help but say, I'm sorry to Krista and that I abandoned her. Being a willing participant is a complicated thing, but some part of me laid down and took it. Some part of me smothered the fire in me that's given to all of us to guide us on our way. Some part of me decided I wasn't worthy to allow that fire. I didn't allow self-care to weigh heavily in my life decisions. Like a reflex, I put my hand on my chest and I hold Krista's heart. My next thought is about how much I want to make it up to her. Oh, I just love that paragraph. It's the homecoming. There's been a liberation in my clients who see their past through making amends to how they were complicit to their own suffering versus only being a victim of another's abuse. Boy.
Very important.
Very important, yeah. We realize we didn't rise up and stand in the truth. Even if we were children, we see it as an invitation to be bold enough to do so. It becomes about our inner work. And that's where it's like the intricacies of working with children when they are not taking their power to make their lives better and realizing what levers. You can also look upon them and go, oh, look at the traumas that they had where they split from their power, right? It's just such a compassionate view. It's never coming from this disgust, which was I did to myself and was done to me. It's like, why didn't you just walk away? Why didn't you just do this? Why didn't you just speak up? Because we didn't know, and there's still so much ignorance in the world of how trauma causes us to split from our very voice.
Trauma bonding.
Trauma bonding. We have compassion on ourselves. These traumatic events are head spinning and cause us to doubt our deepest truth. I'm not saying it's our fault. I'm not saying that we should have had the capacity to tell someone to F off in the presence of their invisible dark force. However, we do split from ourselves to survive, right? Children have to. That's where like the attachment styles, have really come from. Going, oh, their parents didn't meet their needs. Oh, I better not have needs, because if I do, that is like abandonment is like death, right? Even when it betrays us, it served us at the time in our childhoods when it was too much for us.
Well, to me, that's kind of what I was talking about last time of as we heal, memories come back. As we create that healing space within us, these traumas that we've suppressed, that we almost forget even happened, come up in the healing space for you to transcend them.
It's so interesting. So the true self shows up in the present moment. You can't be in the true self and not be in the present moment. And the more you taste of what it feels like to not be in your, what they call like the monkey mind, the ego mind, that's got to be going, I'm defining myself by my past, my future, worrying about all this shit about our, small identity. When you like let that go and go, oh, I'm more in the true self, you let go of all the things you need to medicate yourself and distract yourself and the consumerism and competing and comparing and conflicting and conspiring and condemning other, like there's just spaciousness. That's when all these memories start coming because you're in this great love affair with your soul and you're like, ooh, I'm relishing this journey that I've had. of my life, and you just welcome even the painful memories, the insight. It just becomes your interior landscape becomes the great journey.
I would even say that the painful memories are no longer painful because you've you've healed that wound, so you're able to transcend the experience, and that's why it even comes up, because it is no longer attached to the pain inside your
Right.
body.
It's like underneath it is love.
Mm.
It's like Richard Rohr talks about it, calling it bright sadness. And as you get older, it's like this hope and this sadness, because the sadness is a quality. Carla McLaren would use like sadness as this letting go. It's this letting go. It's you're letting yourself die. You're getting older, loss, things you can never have back again. And you're looking at it like I can never go back and reparent my children. That's why I'm so excited and committed to staying alive if I have any power to move that lever to give to my grandchildren and great-grandchildren. But you can't go back. You can't undo those things. So you hold them in this bright sadness and this humility. But underneath all of that is love, 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 love. Under loss, it's love. I had this quote. I think I put it in the book, but it was I said, I wept today for the losses for all I've lost in my life, my losses in my life.
Yeah, it's in the book.
Yeah. And then I realized what I was really feeling was love. And that could never be taken from my heart. Mm-hmm. And so it becomes this bright sadness that we hold. It's just that presence, that wisdom, that it's just your life becomes so rich when you don't have to flee those parts of you, because they're no longer shame. You wear them of going, look at everything I have that has even been forgiven by love that's within my very soul. So then you can give that to other people. Okay. Carolyn Mace and James Finley state the healing of trauma. And I would say what she would call, because there's trauma that's like in the body. She would call it the spiritual healing. The spiritual healing of trauma is a mystical one. I am one whose life, meaning it takes a mystical experience, an experience that transcends our awareness that we have at this level, right? It's with the divine. It's with the very presence of love that comes in and is able to access through all the lies and bring in a new reality, a new experience, a new understanding, a new way of seeing ourselves and the world.
Exactly. When you heal your trauma, you look at the world differently, so you change the world.
You change the world because of you give the divine gaze. You are now looking at the world with new eyes.
Well, and I find once you heal your trauma, you naturally become a rod of healing in other people's lives.
You were saying that, and that's how we change the world. That's like, yeah. That's what we're learning about, right? Quantum physics, about the power that we all have. I am one whose life testifies to that truth. I couldn't heal my traumas, my complicity in re-traumatizing myself, and not heeding my own guidance system by any of the therapeutic modalities I went through. My survival compass was damaged. I needed to enter the mystical realm where infinite possibilities await. So deep compassion and reverence are in order. Never self-hatred nor shame. As Thomas Merton said, self-loathing never works. We can now speak up and remove ourselves from what harms us. There's no shame in this, only love. Not taking care of ourselves or becoming who we're meant to be can become habit forming. Boy, is that true. The idea of making amends to myself came like this. That's really interesting how you were talking last podcast about how, I think it was the last one, about our strength is our weakness, which is, again, or a chapter in the book, but
It was the one before, but yeah.
no, but there's a chapter in the book about our strength is our weakness. And, one of my strengths is being a support. And it was one of your strengths, and how you would abandon your own gifts because you were such a support to other people's visions for their lives. And boy, is that true for me. We were talking about the amount of
That was
time.
pretty much my entire 20s.
And it's like, and yet I can, when I'm in the purest of gifts, I can be a support to someone, and it can feel really healthy.
Well, I would
versus
say
when it's
for
you're
me,
abandoning.
right, it's because you're coming from the full cup, not looking for your cup to be filled from others, right? At least for me, when I was in my 20s, I was being the support because I was looking for my cup to be filled from exterior validation from my support of others. Going, oh, you're so good at helping this person succeed. Oh, so now that for some reason, and it's so not it's not pure fulfillment, right? It's
Yeah.
fulfillment in the moment. It's the dopamine hit. It's the
Your love wasn't, you weren't loving yourself. That would be I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah, no,
I'm
you're
sorry, I
right.
didn't. It's like you weren't loving yourself. It's like you have to love people first before you can love others. That would be a good example.
Yeah,
Like
well, I was loving others before I was loving myself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I wasn't loving them fully, because I was loving them in my own selfish, manipulative way, because I was only loving them in the way that they served me, not in the way of truly loving them for who they are.
Yeah, I still think you loved and cared, like, or
so it's that balance of what we talked about of yes, everyone can love from not being complete, but you can't really do all your other emotions. So maybe I was loving them, but anytime I had a problem, it lashed out because my love wasn't complete, right?
It was a conditional.
Right, exactly. So it wasn't pure love because I wasn't loving myself. So as soon as I was seeing something that I didn't think I loved, instead of addressing it in a healthy way, I lashed out as if because I was, in a way, I was betraying myself because I was loving them more than I was loving myself.
Okay, confession time.
Yeah.
That's where supportive Krista, that's so loving and supportive, that's just doing that very thing. And then all of a sudden it will come up and they're like, where did that come from Krista, that she's pissed off about that? I would be the same thing because I wasn't being honest.
Well, because when you betray yourself so much, when you finally do get full of the no, fuck this, it doesn't come out in a healthy way. It explodes. It explodes, and that's why everyone's so confused, because you've been so catering to their needs for so long that they're almost unaware of your needs.
Like what?
Yeah, as
what are you talking about?
Yeah, why you haven't
them.
needed needs for months? Why would you have needs now?
Yeah. The idea of making amends to myself came like this. I felt sorrow that I neglected Krista many times, and that I didn't do all I could to rise up and say, here I am. What do you need? The weeks on end, I didn't get the exercise that's vital to move energy, heal trauma, or care for my body and soul. Wasn't good amends making. When I abandoned and betrayed Krista, I left my body because it was too painful. I felt so much fear at times in my life, and rightfully so. Like, there is a place for that. That's that difference between the healthy fear, that's the gift of fear. I've had very violent people in my life, and psychopaths. This is just my path. It was just my path to have gone through this. When I abandoned and betrayed Krista, I left my body. Okay, but now I live here in my body and heart and never want to leave. I have fun caring for Krista. I've taught my phrase, learning how to love well while practicing elegant and intelligent self-care for years. I admit all the time I have yet to learn what that means, and I'm not always good at it. But when I think of making amends to myself, everything is different. It's clear, spacious, and beautiful. I love Krista now like never before. Now I'm on the bounce course, the course where all my failings and falling downs bounce me back up. Like the sun that rises every morning, there's always hope for me and for you. On the bounce course, making amends to ourselves is as intrinsic as breathing. Making amends to ourselves looks different to each of us. Some of us will take every care to not collapse into medicating our pain. For others, it's being mindful not to fall into caretaking. It's creating new habits and brain tracks to change behavior. It's beautiful boundaries or getting to know ourselves and to be our best friend and guardian angel. We keep at it until the big shift happens. Once it happens, making amends to ourselves becomes as natural as breathing. Let's stop holding our breath when the storms come. Just breathe.
Some reflection
That makes me happy.
questions. How could seeing yourself through the focus of making amends to yourself help you hold both self-compassion and an energy that helps you use your fire to honor and protect yourself, instead of constriction that old, unprocessed anger or hatred does to you?
Yeah. It's a whole different energy, right? Oh, I'm feeling it's like, no, it's taking the wisdom and moving it towards self-agency. It's the opposite from victim. This is what's been done to me, and I just need to sit in all this feelings. Like we need to sit with it to learn what we need to learn, but then we need to go, where's I complicit in abandoning myself? Where do I have the power? Remember at the beginning of the book, we are co-creators. We are the orchestrators of our lives. We are not ultimately, this victim consciousness is a deep, deep enemy of
love and connection
and how we were created.
Mm.
And how we were created to be able to be co-creators and artists of our lives. And to listen to, what does our soul want? Oh, my soul needs this. This is what I value. And it's an interesting path, because I value things so much of health and was that from an early age. And that is not going with most of the crowd, right? And that's the coming home and loving yourself and loving yourself. Yeah.
Well, like you were even saying, a version of loving yourself is turning down going out to eat because those friends want to go out to eat to somewhere that isn't healing and filling you up.
Yeah, sometimes it's not worth adapting to be around the people. It's like they got to be really delicious conversation to have their shitty food. You're right. It's got to be worth it. I mean, sometimes I do, but not always. Yeah, that's loving myself.
Where do you want to make amends to yourself?
Well, this podcast is the making amends. This is making amends to the decades that I have given my life to supporting other people. I
would say for both of us.
Yes,
both
of us.
No longer being the supporting version of ourselves, but supporting ourselves in our vision to help others.
That is supporting the truest, highest gifts that we can bring into the world. Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah.
In what areas could you make amends to yourself and bounce into your greater self-love, awareness, and sensitivities because of what you went through?
Okay, what I'm basically saying, I think what I'm saying is, because of what you went through, you have greater awareness and sensitivities. How do you lean into those and use those as wisdom, in going, okay, because I learned this, it's okay, I'm just thinking about something. Like, say you abandon your health and then you get some kind of autoimmune disease, and that forces you to have to completely change your diet, your exercise, your stress, your sleep, what you're putting, your work, that is a way of going, oh, I'm now going to make amends by eating so well, loving myself, having so much fun, taking care of myself, learning a whole new world, becoming, freaking longevity, ancestral. That becomes making amends for all the years that you actually contributed to this thing. And then lo and behold, you got rid of your autoimmune disease,
That's like a physical formation of transcending your trauma, right? Your
yeah,
disease is the trauma that you neglected yourself,
of,
right?
of betraying and abandoning.
Because our trauma happens from when we neglect ourselves, right? We aren't speaking up in a situation, and that's when the trauma occurs. So this is just a physical it's a physical breakdown of any trauma that we experience, and how do you transcend that in the other way?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I could say, so like I have it's just a reminder again that you can live with. You can have scars on your body that remind you, and you go, ooh, that happened because of that. And I am going to then go to the other way to not put myself in that situation again.
Wonderful. How does the thought of seeing how we betrayed ourselves out of a survival strategy strengthen the reflex to turn that into a strength through greater self-care?
Yeah. I mean, I just, Infinity Health is one of our brands where, that there is just a great dearth of awareness of health and a connection to our bodies and to our future selves that we split. It's very interesting when I watch people eating really shitty food. And it's not like there's not a time to eat shitty food, okay, I was bored or whatever. But you can see, and they'll start, and I've even seen it with kids, and they start laughing, but they're not laughing out of joy. They're laughing because they actually are leaving their bodies.
Mm.
I'm just eating. And you can watch them leave their grounding.
Mm.
And because they're having to almost split from deep wisdom.
Well, they're also probably getting such a sugar high that it's a almost out of body experience with how terrible our food is, that it's
Yeah.
so we got sugar in our burger buns these days. It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. Yeah.
no wonder you leave your body. It's
Yeah.
you're being dumped, but with more sugar from a cheeseburger than someone would have in their entire life.
Yeah. Yeah. And so one of my things has always been the play, the artistry, the creativity, the fairy in me, because love of cooking is one of my greatest passions in this life. But how almost everything can be done with joy, and it's like, oh, you may have that. I can make that so freaking high, nutritiously dense, healthy, with no bad shit in it, and it's going to taste just as good or better. It's like the creative way. Oh, how can you make exercise fun? How do you create your space to make it work for you? How do you live from seeing everything as abundance and play and joy? That's the childlike nature. And that's also how we can make amends. Instead of going, oh, this is loss, I'm like, oh, no, this is gain. Like showing people, it's like, no, getting rid of shit out of your house that you don't need is actually abundance mentality, because you don't need to be hoarding thinking there's lack. It's like, we're not, no, you can give it to someone else. So yeah, I would say there's so many areas and levers that when you open up, there's nothing to resist and be all, it's like, oh, how can I turn this into a strength? Every single thing. Oh, I can't eat that anymore. Okay, great. I'm going to learn all the great ways to eat differently and make it incredibly good and healthy. And yeah.
So how does this level of self-awareness and self-care make you a better leader? I would say you can't be a leader until you have this self-awareness and self-care, right? You can't lead from a broken house or a broken ship or a broken whatever, a broken soul. I think we have a lot of leaders that are leading from a broken place, and that's why we get led to these broken results, right? This trauma keeps reoccurring because we are following broken leaders.
Mm-hmm. This is why it's interesting. So many really top leaders and thought leaders now. You look at their life, and you're like, they're cleaning everything out. The way they exercise, the way they sleep, the way they eat, their weight, their lifestyle, what they invest their money in. Because they know to be at that high performance, it's every area they have to be loving and caring for themselves.
Sleeping with the enemy. You hear the voice telling you not to do something, and you do it anyways. Then tell yourself you didn't want to create conflict or be criticized. You have constantly ended up betraying yourself. Carolyn Mace.
Yeah.
And I would argue that desire to not have conflict creates the conflict that you don't have between that relationship by stuffing your opinion because you didn't want that conflict creates conflict inside of you. You have betrayed yourself, and it's a rotting of your soul that you are causing. And we wonder why we feel like shit after hanging out with people that we can't be ourselves.
Yeah. And some of that, we were talking about the complexity of, dissociating and trauma and different things that becomes that skill where you get really good, because especially if you've been abused when you're really little, the trauma's so great, you become dissociative. And I've seen people who have been around like psychopathic people. I'm thinking of one situation in particular, and the amount to get along and to not have conflict. And this was an ex. I would watch her to be around this person, to, have this person as her friend. You just watch her. Like the person would act out and she'd just leave her. She'd just dissociate. She'd just leave. And then she didn't have to feel how pathological it was. So it's so complex going, okay, where can we heal that, and where do we find our voice and our fire again to find that integrity and our desire to be whole really helps us going, I don't want to live false, to have a big network of people and a lot of Facebook likes.
Well, it's the example that when you live in your integrity, people will the people that matter the most stand by you, and it's better to have 10 people that will ride or die with you than 100 people that think you're all right.
Yeah. Sometimes something or someone feels like life to us, but in the end, it's the enemy of all we're called to do in this life. It's tricky because once we go to bed with someone or something that doesn't serve the life that wants to be lived through us, we're kind of screwed. It's tricky to get unscrewed. Attachments to substances, bad habits, crazy-making relationships that are unfixable, brain tracks that leave us hopeless and helpless, you fill in who or what you're sleeping with, are not always easy to break off. The attachment may give us euphoric recall, where we remember the high but forget the low afterward. That's what happens with, the alcohol, is that we go, oh my God, they got drunk, they threw up, the hangover. But the euphoric recall is they only remember how good it felt to be high, and they forgot the negative consequences. Isn't that fascinating? That happens with everything. We adapt, and that's especially with the trauma bond or with pathological people, is that the highs, oh my God, if I do this, they'll treat me really well, or they'll love bomb me in this moment. And then you become so addicted to that little crumb.
Yeah, the one breakout moment of what you fell in love with the person can be dragged out as the thing that keeps you there through the trauma.
Yeah. And I would say, the shopping addiction, dopamine addiction, like anything that you go that, that we forget the consequence, that how much that took out of our day to do or something. We adapt to living on a small scale and call it acceptance or long suffering. We call it life when it's death. Like the alcoholic who can't wait to get to the bar because it feels like life, the family members know it's only death. Often those around us see where we're deceiving ourselves. I hope I'm done sleeping with the enemy. That's why I have my accountability partners, APs for short, to help me see where I make my bed. We may get out of it disease-free, or we may need some intervention to clean up what infected us. Either way, it sobers us to reflect on the concept of where we're sleeping with the enemy. I make it a regular practice to ask myself, are my bedfellows all that terrific after all? Sometimes we're so trapped in a one-flesh bond that's all at such a low vibrational level, we feel off balance, and all we ever learned about self-care is forgotten. We're just trying to figure it out. That has been a pattern of mine. But with great intention, community, and feeding our souls truth, we're able to get unscrewed and leave the life we have to get the life that's waiting for us, as James Hillman said. Actually, I think he got that from Carl Jung. He was a Jungian psychologist. I think actually Carl Jung said that. New life comes with having higher standards because we're worth it. Together we'll make our beds with peace.
Beautifully said. Is there anything that's thrilling, dangerous, euphoric, secretive, or leaves you feeling powerless? An enemy that you'd like to stop sleeping with if you'd believed the bond could be broken?
Mm-hmm. That's it again, not being cynical that we talk about at the very beginning of our podcast.
Well,
believing that it can be broken.
Well, and for me, the thing that I was really thinking about as you're reading a lot of that was obviously it's one thing when you sleep with a person that is not serving you, abusing you or things, but I really liked the idea of when we go to sleep with ideas or things that aren't really serving us, and how when we go to sleep, they talk about sleep as such a healing experience. It is also a validating of our experiences. They say, you study a lot. The studying doesn't actually keep it in your brain. It's the sleeping after the studying that makes that information solid in your brain. And so I think that can be same thing with negative thoughts or negative ideas that aren't serving us, that we hold on to, that we tell these stories that are, the amount of people that talk about having problems sleeping, and they have attachments to these negative stories that become their identity. And to me, that is like that version of sleeping with the enemy. What ideas are you sleeping with every night? Or what bully in your own head is there next to you, not allowing you to sleep your truest loving self?
Oh, I love that. That's it. That's the attachment, right? That's what we're saying. We're attached to our story. We're attached to our thoughts. We're attached to our, right. They're saying it like, it could be 98% of what we think is repetitive, right? Over and over. Like that's the ego mind. We're not present. We're not in our true self. We're in our false self.
And that's what the infinity loop is about, of always relooking at things. So if we know that 98% of what we think is false, then it's very important for us to continuously relook at things over and over again, because there might be new information.
Yeah, because I would say it's false because it's not ultimately truth, right? It's not filtered through the abundant field. Again, it may be true that this happened, but ultimately it does not have the power to define our precious life.
How would freedom from this enemy make you a better leader? And so for when this enemy is these negative thoughts, when you then wake up more positive enriched, driven for the right reasons, that to me embodies a natural leader. And the same thing if it's a person. I think most people are able to see the negativity of a relationship before you are. And so if you are then able to step away from that negative relationship, other people see your strength. And I think it's a calling to live their best self, because they saw, oh, if this person is leading by example by stepping away from that relationship that we all saw wasn't serving them, then maybe I could do the same.
That's good.
What power does this enemy take from you? Define your enemy. Whether that is a person or a thought, so
or
many
a
times.
substance or food.
Yeah, very well put.
Habit.
I mean, the amount
wasting time.
The amount of people that
wasting our lives.
I see trying to lose weight and have this demon on their back, yet they refuse to give up soda, or they have these bad habits that they're still so attached to, yet they wonder why they're unable to lose weight or get whatever demon off their back. And you can't slay the demon the same way you got the demon.
Ooh, tell me more about that.
Well, you can't lose the weight by eating McDonald's, right? You got fat from eating McDonald's. Just because you all of a sudden are working out isn't going to stop you, right? So just because you picked up one positive habit, you have to let go the negative positive habit. Or you're not going to love yourself while still shaming yourself for something that happened when you were 18. Or you can't have one without the other, right? You can't have the love for yourself till you let go the hate you had. In what ways does it feel addictive, right? It sometimes can feel addictive to beat yourself up, right?
It's a ritual.
To shame yourself,
it's a brain track.
To say you are unworthy of positive things in your life. And I see it very often in people that play the victim, right? When you play the victim, you can't get out of that.
Because it does have a reward. There's a feedback loop. There is rewards.
Well, now more than ever in society, we are validated, and almost there's a high that comes from being a victim, because we don't encourage people to rise above their victimhood. We encourage people right now, at least in mass society, to own it and wear it like a badge, as if it's something you should be proud of. And I'm not.
Something you can use as an opportunity. Versus, we need more warriors. That's the infinity loop that's going to change the world, is when we become warriors of love.
How will you protect yourself from the deception?
Inner stillness, getting rid of things and people that would distract me from doing the deep work, accountability partners.
This is what comes back to having the tools, right? You don't just get fixed. You get fixed from practice of using the tools in the situations that you need them the most. There's no magic pill. Oh, all of a sudden I figured it out.
Wonder Woman.
It's that knowing when these things arrive in our life and come up, that we lean back on our tools, because we aren't a divine perfect being. We are a divine imperfect being that needs each other to be our best selves. Loving myself questions. It's not your job to like me, it's mine. And to me, that's
Byron Katie.
Byron Katie, yes, my apologies.
So
to me, though, that is the ultimate loving yourself, right? It is not your job to be loved by others. It's your job to love yourself. And when you love yourself, way more people are going to love you than you ever could have had love you from placating their needs.
Yeah. And then another thing she says, which is so good, she goes, well, if you think someone doesn't love you, it's this no, actually, they do love you. Their true self loves you. They're just confused. Like everybody's true self loves you. So it's like someone hates you and you're like, that's just their false self coming at you.
Well,
Their true self loves you.
And if they're not in their true self, we don't want to be interacting with them anyways, as we're trying to transcend to our
Yeah.
truest self. That's what
We have to be very
we want to gather up
discerning.
more and more people that are striving for their truest self.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, not that we dismiss people that aren't good at it. It's when they don't want that.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
when they're not on the growth, they don't have a growth mind. When they're not on the path, and it really will work against you, loving yourself, making amends to yourself, doing what you need to do in the world. Yeah.
What's that statement I've said? We don't judge those who don't have the tools. We judge those that are unwilling to learn the tools when presented to them.
Yeah. Having sound judgment and go, yeah, not interested, not a buyer. Don't want to learn that. Yeah. I'm like, okay. I have to stop making that noise. Okay.
Because it pops.
Sorry. I like making it. Okay. What would it look like to love me in this moment?
What do I need?
What do I value?
What kind of people do I want in my life?
Check in with my body. Do I leak energy to others?
Do I enable?
Do I cover for someone out of fear?
What is the draw to this situation?
What role do I play in the relationship?
What feels familiar and why?
What does that person represent that I disown in myself?
Am I in my power?
How am I treated?
What don't I like?
With body dualism, with both dualism and non-dualism, what do I see? What do I feel? Where's the disturbance? Let me say what I'm trying to say here. Dualism is the either or. That's the first look. That's the, ooh, that's weird. Oh, don't like that. Oh, that was, And the non-dual is the wider view. That's the accepting, loving gaze that can then hold them with humanity, that doesn't have that just disgust. It holds their humanity, the divinity. It's the loving, it's the white. So I can see both and I can hold both, but I don't use the second look, the non-dual, to censor out the first. It's like, that's the skill, that's the Wonder Woman. And to be able to track the disturbance and to hold what I see. And then to also go, ooh, do I not like that because that's in me? Oh, how is that in me? Right? But we don't go all ooey gooey.
In an elevated psychological aroused state, how do I speak up instead of shrink?
So that's energized, but not in fight or flight. So like what's called EPA, elevated psychological arousal. You're just energized. You're there. You're engaged, right? It's all the E's, but it's not fight or flight. Oh, how will I be more honest? I'm struggling with this. I'm not sure how I feel about that. That's a good way to start the conversation.
What is most safe for me?
What do I tolerate that isn't loving to myself?
Where do I need to trust the bounce more?
Meaning that I can, that I will rise again, that I am falling down, but I will rise into bigger life.
Well, it's the lie we tell ourselves that we need someone else to validate us, that causes us to stay in a relationship that doesn't serve us. And so we feel that we are unable to bounce out of that because of our false need for this person.
Yeah. What makes me feel bad about myself in an unhealthy way? Not different from, deep introspection that's taking my inventory, that's taking my moral inventory and going, yeah, I should feel really crappy I mean, I remember years that I would be up all night replaying how I overtalked, was not in
Going
my
to sleep
body.
with the enemy?
Well, no, I was actually, yeah, yeah, yeah. But it was, the enemy of me. I would say
Right,
what
right.
I would be thinking about, talking about feeling bad about myself is I did feel bad about myself for good reason, because I would be like, Krista, you were just into you were trying to validate you were just not present. It would be because I wasn't present, and so I would say stupid, insensitive things, and I would just replay them, and I just, the amount of regret, but I didn't know how to fix it. And but still sitting with that, and different, I guess the differentiation I'm trying to make is feeling bad about ourselves in an unhealthy way is when somebody is or we have done to ourselves, we have internalized this critical self-loathing. As Thomas Merton says, self-loathing never works. Yeah, where are we doing that and not loving ourselves? This is in contrast to feeling sorrow over my not loving well. This is someone's manipulation of me to believe I'm not loving just because I don't agree with their behavior or reality. I acknowledge my contributions to breakdowns in relationships without being treated with disdain
Who tries to dismiss me?
or diminish me.
Diminish me.
Both,
Yeah.
both work. Where do my thoughts keep me from awareness of what diminishes me and lead me to not take care of myself? Ooh, what are my thoughts that keep me from awareness of what diminishes me and lead me to take care of myself? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Wow.
What would it look like to courageously go deeper and explore what needs to be adjusted in your life? Talking with your APs, journaling. It's again, what I always liked saying is leaning on those tools, right? I think these questions are very important for people to have in their daily life, and especially if you're questioning relationships. I think this is a very helpful, safe place to go and ask these questions about your relationships.
Mm-hmm. This book is sort of like Melody Beatty, who is a great author on codependency. I had so many of her like daily meditations. I mean, this book really was designed to keep and to just go back to these as checkups of just like people doing recovery, right? We're recovering from the estrangement from ourselves and going back and revisiting. People say this book is on my nightstand because these need to be going over and over and over again.
And that's why we're doing the podcast, because we
Yeah.
find that it is just helpful to sometimes hear it, not just read it.
Mm-hmm.
What is your greatest fear that may keep you from loving yourself more and honoring love and truth in a healthier way?
I would say punitive behavior, the trauma that other people bring, the cruelty, the they don't like it when you don't over adapt and aren't an extension of their narcissistic self-involvement or whatever, or just the cost. There's losses that you lose the crumbs of the good of that. You go, yeah, that was a loss. That was something I really enjoyed doing with that person. How do I then bring that back into my life in another? I mean, there's
In another healthy
I mean,
way.
you talk about divorce and a norm. That's why it's such a huge decision to make, because I don't think people can calculate the loss of what will come into their life. You can't imagine. You're like, you think it's, and you could be high, and your psychiatrist could have put you on antidepressants so you to get through it, because God forbid you be sad, and the courts don't want to see you be weepy. You need to be strong. But the problem is that you can lose the grounding of the gravity, the sadness, the things that could hold for you to go, oh, this is the cost of everything that I'm doing. Because we, like, anything that makes us kind of high or leaves our body is very dangerous. We can lose our right? Because it's the grounding that can hold the weight.
Are you talking about when we emotionally regulate, or are you talking about just like high, like drinking, food, like what kind of high
Anything,
are you
shopping,
talking about?
yeah, or we both speak out the concerns about antidepressants, and even now what they're finding about the long-term damage to not only your memory but shortening your life, and things that they don't know that are fueled very much by money that we're pushing these. But I mean, that was one of the greatest regrets of my life, is the 2.5 years that I was on Zoloft. And but not, I don't know why I'm bringing this up. I guess
To honoring yourself in a healthier way.
yeah, what's the greatest fear? Oh, okay, it's because
Were you afraid of the pain, and that's why you went to the
well,
antidepressants? Are you
this
afraid of the
doctor just thought,
sadness?
I
Or
didn't even think I needed it. This
Mm,
OBGYN just thought I looked sad and said, this is what you need. But
yeah.
oh no, it's because also then all this physical trauma stuff was coming up, and like, oh no, you need that. But the point I'm making is where I get know where I'm coming from. It's the cost to all of our decisions. No wonder we fear them, because there is costs. There's costs. We are being cleaned out. That is the warrior. There's costs to living jobs where you're like, this was a big pay, but I am not bringing good into the world. I have got to find another thing to do with my life and my skills and my intelligence and my time that is bringing more good in the world.
I think, though, the fear of the cost can sometimes cause paralysis. And I think the
Yeah.
cost might not necessarily be as high as someone believes, right? I think a lot of
Right.
people, if you're going on a scale from 1 to 10, 10 is like the cost that you'll probably die, and 1, there's no
Yeah.
chance ever. I think a lot of people are afraid of these costs that are at 4 and 5, and viewing them as more of like 8s and 9s, if that makes sense, on this scale of
Yeah.
what is cost, when like leaving a job because you're comfortable, not knowing that risk is, the reward is 10 times worth whatever the risk
Yeah.
is.
And that's where it just takes such strategy of, weighing everything out that we're doing, and our responsibilities and all of that.
Living life like a team player, not like it's an individual story.
Yeah, that's good.
But thank you again so much for joining us on the Infinity Loop Group podcast. I hope our insight was helpful for you, and sharing this book brings love and joy into your life. If so, please rate, view, subscribe, share with others.
Comment.
Together we accomplish more. And thank you for listening to the Infinity Loop Group. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.